Hello, today on my channel you will hear an amazing story about life. I hope you enjoy this story. This one struck me to the core. Honestly, I still can't forget it. Enjoy watching.
Angelica looked thoughtfully out of the window. In the hospital yard, nurses were scurrying back and forth. The janitor was removing snow from the paths. There was a lot of snow this year. There had not been such a blizzard for a long time, which would completely cover the roads, in a matter of minutes hiding the traces of car tires and human feet. The woman thought that she had gotten off easy when she got to the hospital, but she could have been lying in a cemetery by now. She touched the bandage on her head with her hand. It still hurt badly underneath. Falling, Angelica hit her head on the corner of the cabinet, lost consciousness, and when she woke up, she realized that she was in the hospital and nothing threatened her yet. But only for now. Sooner or later she would have to return home, and there, Angelica's sister-in-law sleeps and sees how she will become a full-fledged owner of her mother-in-law's luxurious apartment. Selena doesn't even make any secret of the fact that she has a lover anymore. Goes to him on dates, and Angelica's son, like a blind kitten, does not notice anything. Or doesn't want to notice? "Harry, hello," said the woman, dialing the notary's phone number. "How is your health, you precious man?" "Oh, Angelica, what is health now? It has become a dream even for the rich, and for a simple man like your humble servant, Harry, it is out of reach. The whole body aches, I can tell you. But if you ignore some parts, you can live a little longer." The old Jewish notary laughed into the telephone receiver. "Harry, I really need to see you." "What are you talking about, Angelica? Come to my office at any time." This man was always happy to see the daughter of his old friend and the wife of his old friend John, who unfortunately is no longer alive. No, Angelica said hastily. "I can't do it myself. The thing is, I'm in the hospital." "My God, what's wrong with you?" The man was worried. "I'm all right now, but I'd like you to draw up a paper for me." All anyone wants from old Harry nowadays is paper, I tell you. But before, Angelique knew the notary, who was a member of her parents' household. If he started reminiscing, it would be impossible to stop the old man, and she wasn't ready for long stories about the intricacies of Harry's fate, so she tried to interrupt him. "So can you come?" She asked a little louder than she had spoken before. Of course, Angelica," the notary assured her. "Your late father, may he rest in peace, asked me not to refuse your legal requests. What hospital are you in? I'll be there tomorrow morning." Angelica dictated the hospital address to Harry, disconnected the phone. She had to do that because her sister-in-law had gotten a lot of nerve. This country girl with the grip of a tigress would soon throw her, and then Angelica's son out on the street. Lately, it had become abundantly clear to the woman why Selena had married her Anthony. Such predators do not bend any methods to achieve their goal. And the purpose of daughter-in-law Angelica was a luxury apartment on the main street of the city with windows on the waterfront and 3-meter ceilings, decorated with antique stucco, as well as a bank account inherited from her late husband. Housing inherited from her parents, in this apartment she was happy with her beloved husband. Here from the maternity hospital they brought twins Anthony and Betty. The voice of one of the nursing staff called out from the corridor, "Lunch, lunch." The ward mates rose from their beds and headed for the door. It was lunchtime, but Angelica did not move. She continued to lie there. After the stroke, the whole right side of the woman's body was paralyzed, so breakfast, lunch, and dinner were brought directly to her room. So it happened this time. The nurse came in with a tray, placed the plates on the nightstand, and sat down next to her on a chair to feed the woman. She slowly scooped up the noodle soup with a spoon, brought it to Angelica's mouth, and said, "You really need to gain strength to recover, so do not resist, eat." Angelica obediently opened her mouth. Having eaten a little, she said to the nurse, "Thank you, Natalie, for your kindness. Take some candy from the nightstand on the shelf. I have nothing else to thank you for." The nurse tried to refuse at first, but then decided it was better not to argue with a sick woman. She needs peace. She will take the box with treats so as not to upset the sick woman. "Why don't your relatives come to take care of you?" she asked Angelica, adjusting her pillow. "There is no one, Natalie," the woman answered sadly. "My son is almost always on business trips, trying to earn money for his young wife. And what about the daughter-in-law? She could have come at least once a day. At least she could have fed you homemade food. We don't have very good food in the hospital, you see." My sister-in-law has no time for me, Angelica replied. In the year that Selena lived with them in the same apartment, she had not become close to Angelica. The girl did not consider her mother-in-law at all. On the contrary, did everything to get rid of her. Selena constantly scandalized with Angelica, and their last quarrel was the reason that the woman went to the hospital. Don't worry, the nurse naively assured her, I'll take care of you on my shift. She began to bring the woman homemade food, spoon-feeding her, taking out the duck. And Angelica thought, when I get discharged, I should give this girl money. She takes care of her like a close acquaintance, always comes to check on her before she even starts her shift. Angelica was born in the family of a large official, Anthony Walker. Parents were not old. About such moms and dads still say aged parents. But for Angelica, they were always the best. The girl's mom was the director of a weaving factory. She spent all her time at work. Ariana, a woman who lived with them in one of the far rooms, kept order in the apartment, and her daughter. For as long as Angelica could remember, Ariana had always been there for her. No one called the woman a housekeeper. She had long since become a member of the family and Angelica's nanny. Ariana cleaned the apartment, cooked dinner, braided the girl's pigtails. Since her mother was often not at home, Angelica confided all her secrets and mysteries to the nanny. And she treated her like a daughter, or rather like a granddaughter. She checked her homework, made sure that Angelica dressed warmly for walks, knitted for her socks and mittens from sheep's yarn. All diseases come from the feet, she said for the 100th time, forcing Angelica to put on woolen socks. Feet should always be warm. The girl did not always obey her nanny, but they were mostly friends. When Angelica entered the institute, her father brought a stately man into the house. Ariana set the table in the large living room, arranged the cutlery, and her mother welcomed her father and the guest. This is John. He was transferred to our department from another agency, so now we will be colleagues. We will do, so to speak, one big thing. The man had kind, beaming eyes. Very nice, he said, handed Angelica's mother a bouquet of flowers and the girl a box of chocolates. Angelica ran into the living room. Ariana, look what candy John brought. She showed the gift to the nanny. Don't open the box. Eat properly first, the nanny warned the girl. Ariana knew that Angelica had a sweet tooth and made sure she didn't get candy in her face as often as possible. At the table that day, there was a relaxed, friendly, almost family atmosphere. Angelica's mother was happy to keep the men talking and seemed cheerful. After that dinner, John began to frequent the Walker house. Usually they locked themselves in his father's study, talked about something, and then went out into the living room, where Ariana treated the men to tea and cottage cheese. One day after such a tea party, John turned to Angelica. Angelica, could you keep me company? I'd really like to walk along the seafront. It's such a beautiful day. It was a nice May day outside the window. The girl had a summer session ahead of her, but she didn't care much about preparing for exams and credits. She was sure that she would pass everything and go to the 5th year of the economics faculty. Angelica gladly agreed to John's proposal, got an approving nod from her father, and went to her room to change her clothes. Angelica will graduate soon, Anthony told John. I should already be thinking about her future. It's time to find a decent groom. I hope, if Angelica doesn't mind, you'll consider my candidacy too. Asked the father's colleague with a serious face. I like your daughter very much, Anthony. We'll see, evasively replied the girl's father, not depriving the groom of the chance to become his son-in-law. This conversation happened to be overheard by Ariana. What are they thinking? The girl has yet to walk, and they are going to marry her, she thought, taking the dishes to the kitchen. Angelica enjoyed the walk along the promenade. John was 15 years older than her. He told her many interesting things, even read poems by Bloch. He came to the capital from Siberia. The man's career quickly went uphill. A true Siberian, John had a strong character and was not afraid of difficulties. He knew that he had a special place in this big city. The only thing that didn't work out for the man was women. Mary was long overdue, and his colleagues hinted about it. But where to meet a woman who will be a faithful wife and friend when you are constantly at work or on business trips? Anthony's daughter at first sight charmed him with her directness. The girl was well-mannered, studied at one of the best universities in the country, not pretty herself. Angelica and John began to meet sometimes, spent time in cafes, went to the movies and exhibitions. After passing the session, the girl had a lot of free time. Outside the city, the family had a large dacha in a pine forest. Usually Angelica and her nanny spent the whole summer there. Ariana thought that Angelica should breathe fresh air, not exhaust fumes, and took her to the cottage. John began to visit them in his foreign car, bringing various delicious things. Sitting in the gazebo, they talked about all sorts of things. Only the man did not like questions about his work. "It is the most boring of all that I can tell you," he said. Angelica didn't really insist. She asked, more out of politeness, "How are things at work?" But she didn't want him to talk about it. Ariana did not interfere with the young people, but she looked out of the window, noticing things that a stranger would not have noticed. For example, she saw how the man looked at Angelica with loving eyes, how each time he tried to take her hand. But Angelica wasn't particularly amenable to such manipulation. Ariana had raised her well, taught her to keep her ear to the ground with men. "It's a bit old for our girl to have a fiancé, 15 years older. She should have a young one to go dancing with," the woman thought to herself as she took a tray of pies out of the oven. She put the tea and treats on a tray and took them to the gazebo. "Help yourselves, they're freshly made," Ariana said and went into the house. "Your housekeeper's pies are very tasty," John praised. "I eat them and can't get enough. I can't even eat anymore, but my hands are still reaching for more." In mid-August, Angelica and Ariana returned to the city. Soon Angelica would start the most responsible period. She had to prepare for her diploma. Before the new year, John returned from a business trip. The man came to their apartment. He and his father had a long conversation in the study. When they came out, the father told Angelica and her mother that John wanted to talk to them. "I would like to ask you," he said to Angelica's father's wife, "and to Anthony for your daughter's hand in marriage. I have long been in love with Angelica, and I promise I will do everything I can to make her happy." The girl's cheeks flushed scarlet, and she sat with her eyes downcast. From the doorway, Ariana was watching. "Here comes the groom's time. John is matchmaking our girl," she thought. Angelica's mom smiled. "So, is Angelica up for it? Did you ask her?" "I'm sorry, no." The groom was embarrassed. "I decided to get your support first." "Well, Anthony and I will be happy to have such a decent and respectable man by our daughter's side. What do you say, daughter?" She looked at Angelica carefully. It could not be said that Angelica was in love with John, but she definitely liked this adult, intelligent man. He made her feel at ease. In all this time, he'd never done anything to push her away from him. "I agree," Angelica replied, looking into John's eyes. "This case needs to be spritzed," her father said cheerfully, pulling a bottle of champagne from the bar section of the buffet wall. Ariana jumped up, setting the flutes and a box of chocolates on the table. Anthony poured the sparkling wine into glasses, looked around at everyone present, said, "Well, now we are calm for our daughter, advice as they say, and love to the young." Everyone clinked glasses. The clinking of glasses brought a share of joy and fun in the slightly tense atmosphere of matchmaking. "When you get your diploma, you can have a wedding. I will try to make it the most beautiful and lavish, because Angelica is my only daughter." New Year's Eve was ahead. This holiday always gave hope for the best. Everyone was in high spirits. Angelica felt that a new life and many joyful events were ahead of her, one of which was a wedding. But fate ordered otherwise. When the New Year's vacation was over, the household returned to their usual routine. Angelica was preparing for the defense of her diploma, sometimes met with John. Her parents worked, occasionally sharing news over dinner. Her father was increasingly in a bad mood. He was in some kind of trouble at work. Angelica could hear her mother reassuring her husband, "Everything will get better, you so do not worry, you have a sick heart." Father's health also left much to be desired. He said that he would marry off his daughter and retire. "I will live in the country, breathe fresh air, fishing, and wait for my daughter to give me grandchildren," Anthony dreamed. One day the phone rang in the Walker apartment. Ariane answered the phone. "Walker's apartment, I'm listening," she said, holding the receiver in one hand and the rag she had just used to sweep up the dust in the other. Nanny's face was suddenly pale, and she leaned against the wall. When Angelica saw that Ariana was not feeling well, she ran over to her and snatched the telephone receiver. A man's voice was heard in it, finishing what he had started. "It happened in his office. The ambulance didn't make it. Anthony died before the doctors arrived. A heart attack." Angelica's temples pounded hard, her heart beating feverishly. This can't be. It's a mistake, she thought. There were many strangers at the funeral. The funeral procession walked down the cemetery avenue, and it seemed there would be no end to it. Behind the coffin walked Angelica's mother, Ariana, John supporting his fiancée by the elbow. The wife of the deceased was blacker than a cloud. She looked as if she had aged over the days, like a hunched old woman, not the blooming, well-groomed woman Angelica had always seen. When the coffin was lowered into the grave, Angelica's mother sobbed loudly. John put his arm around her, tried to lead her away. The girl followed. They were not at the wake, which was organized for colleagues and close friends of Anthony. At home sat silently at the table. The oppressive silence was unbearable. In the morning, Angelica's mom was found in the bathroom. An empty bottle of sleeping pills lay beside her. She was dead. The shocks that had suddenly descended on Angelique had crippled her. She fell into a severe depression, stopped preparing for the defense of the diploma, all the time lying in her room. John tried to bring her out of this difficult state, but attempts did not yield anything. Ariana was mad that Angelica didn't eat anything. She tried to feed her, but she just pulled a blanket over her head and turned her back to the wall. "We have to do something. We have to save Angelica," she said worriedly to John, pouring tea into a cup. "You better think of something to distract her." "I've already thought of everything. I don't know how to help her." "Maybe a doctor," the nanny suggested. "No way," John said. "Angelica is in such a state that she could be committed to a mental institution." Ariana groaned. She didn't even want to think about it. "Let me take her to your cottage," the man said. "There everything is familiar to Angelica, and on the other hand calm and quiet. I think a few days surrounded by nature will do her good." "And indeed go," agreed the housekeeper, "and I'll cook you some food with me. Angelica's not used to kitchen chores. She'll starve you and herself." John's idea bore fruit. Angelica did feel better. Sitting by the fireplace in the evenings, they talked about her parents. The girl remembered her childhood, trips to the sea, trips to the zoo, family holidays. These memories warmed her petrified heart. John realized that having lost her parents, she needed support, a strong shoulder more than ever. "You know, Angelica," he told her, looking at the fire in the fireplace, "it seems to me your parents are calm for you now, because they know that I am with you. They have given their consent to our marriage, their blessing. I will take care of you. We'll take care of their graves together, visit them often. The grief will gradually become less tearing. You and I will never forget them, but we must move on." "What do you mean?" Angelique asked. "I think a big wedding is out of the question. A year, at least, it is necessary to keep mourning. But you can't be alone now. You can't be without protection. You know," the man took the girl's hand and looked into her eyes. "I suggest that you and I sign the marriage, becoming your husband officially. I can always be there for you." "You're probably right," Angelica replied. She needed John. He was calm, caring. She had no other person so close to her. The man reached out to Angelica, hugged and kissed her. She felt his strong body gradually dissolved in his embrace and kisses. Taking the girl in his arms, John proceeded to the bedroom. A month later, they were married. They simply came to the registry office together, signed the document, and exchanged wedding rings. At home, Ariana set a festive table and sat down next to it. "To the young," said the woman solemnly and raised a glass of champagne. "Live happily ever after." Life went on as usual. Angelica defended her diploma, got a job as an economist. She gave herself to her work. John went for a promotion. Responsible position required from him dedication and time. He often went on business trips, but every time he returned, he appeared on the doorstep of their apartment with a bouquet of flowers and gifts for his beloved wife. They became very close, dear people. Despite being busy, they used every opportunity to be together. In summer, they went on vacation to the sea, and in winter, they spent time at the dacha, enjoying snowy landscapes and pine scent. The couple dreamed of children, but Angelica did not get pregnant. She went to the doctor several times, but the gynecologist said that her health was fine. John refused to go to the hospital, saying that he had no time for this nonsense. He was healthy, and just apparently, it was not yet time for them to become parents. Lying in the hospital room, Angelica thought about the fact that she had brought up her son correctly. He was her helper, but her daughter. The woman tried not to think about her daughter Vale, because every time she thought about her, her heart ached. 10 years had passed since Angelica and John had gotten married. They were preparing to celebrate Angelica's husband's 50th birthday. Together with Ariana, The woman was preparing the menu when suddenly she didn't feel well. A little blurred in the eyes, a nasty lump came to the throat. When Ariana noticed something wrong, she brought a glass of water. "Are you feeling better?" Worried about Angelica's health, she asked. "Yes, I'm going to lie down and then we'll finish our business," Angelica said and went into the bedroom. Despite the absence of children, she and John were happy. Her husband loved Angelica without memory, protected her from trouble, made sure that she did not need anything. He kept his word to her parents, and Angelique was happy with him. Every day she felt more and more warmth for this man, already beginning to gray. When John came home from work, Ariana met him in the hallway. "Where is Angelica?" the man asked. "She is resting in your bedroom. She was not feeling well, so she lay down," said the woman, taking the coat from John's hands. "Will you have dinner?" "Later, I'll go and see how Angelica is feeling." The man went into the bedroom. She was lying there with her eyes closed. It seemed that Angelica was asleep, but she was just immersed in her thoughts and did not hear her husband enter. He quietly sat down on the bed, took his wife by the hand. "Darling, what's wrong with you? Are you tired or sick?" Carefully, tenderly asked John. "Yes, that something was not good, so I lay down," replied his wife. "I'll make an appointment and take you to the clinic tomorrow." "It will pass, Archie, don't worry." Angelica tried to refuse a visit to the doctor. She hated going to hospitals. "Don't even argue, or I'll tie you up with ropes and take you by force," her husband joked. The next day, as promised, he took Angelica to the clinic, where she was examined. It turned out that the cause of the woman's indisposition was pregnancy. The couple were overjoyed, and Ariana, having learned the happy news, started to bake a birthday cake. "This is the best present for my anniversary," John enthused. "I can't imagine what could make me so happy. How much I love you, my dear." At the first ultrasound, it became clear that Angelica and John will have twins. My husband said joyfully, "We will shoot at once. We will give birth to 2 kids at once." The second medical screening showed that a boy and a girl will be born. The couple were glowing with happiness. A son and a daughter at the same time. Sister and brother will be friendly, always support each other, and parents will try to bring them up worthily. Despite the fact that the pregnancy was hard, and Angelica had to go to the hospital from time to time, the births were without complications. The first to be born was Betty, and 2 minutes later, Angelica heard the cry of her son Anthony. The parents came up with names for the children in advance. The girl decided to call Betty, because that was the name of John's late mother, and the boy in honor of Angelica's father. The daughter was born chubby, strong, and the boy was born weak, weighed only 2 kilograms, 600 grams. For several days, he was not brought to his mother. Angelica was worried, but the doctor said that this is normal in the birth of twins and that everything will be fine. And John came to the maternity hospital every day, visited his wife. As a respected man in town, he could not refuse visits. Every time he entered the room with a bouquet of flowers and a bag of fruit, smiled a happy smile. "How are my chicks here?" The man bent down to the babies and admired their cute faces, touched their fingers, took them in his arms, and walked around the ward. "How happy I am, dear. Very soon there will be a lot of children's laughter in our house. These little feet will run from room to room, and Ariana will follow them with porridge and cakes." The couple laughed, rejoicing at the birth of their children. They were now mom and dad to 2 adorable little ones. How happy their grandparents would be together with them. The fact that the parents did not live to see this joyous event was the only reason to feel a little sad. Everything else in life seemed rainbow and cloudless. But the children grew up surprisingly distant from each other. Unlike the other twins who, as people say, are inseparable, always together and almost never apart, Betty and Anthony were not friendly. They often fought over toys, took desks away from each other at school, never played together in the yard. Parents didn't understand this behavior. You should stand for each other. You were together in the womb, almost simultaneously appeared in the world, but you fight, calling each other names, once again reprimanded his daughter and son father. How can you not be ashamed? Anthony poured black paint on my drawing, and now I have to draw again to hand in my homework to the teacher, complained Betty with tears. Dad, it wasn't me, she pushed me. That's why the paint spilled, justified Anthony. Stop it, sternly said the father. You are brother and sister, so you should help each other, not quarrel. Go and wash yourselves and make up now. The children's truce did not last long. They quarreled constantly, easily finding reasons to quarrel. As they grew older, they fought even more violently. Once Betty cut Anthony's favorite t-shirt with scissors. Then the boy took her hairspray and ruined her dress, which was prepared for the prom at school. At the noise, parents rushed into the room. The kids, all grown up, about to graduate from high school, were fighting desperately like street teenagers. The father pulled Betty and Anthony into different corners. "This is unthinkable," he scolded his offspring. "You're not just siblings, you're twins. You're supposed to be one. But you fight all the time. When will it stop? I'm asking you." "Soon, Daddy," Betty said. "Soon I'll go to college and leave you, then live here with your beloved Anthony." Because of the fact that the son was born weak, his parents, without noticing it, made him more favors than Violet. And the girl took offense at this. She was an excellent student, drew beautifully, showed great promise in art school, dreamed of entering the Academy of Painting. Anthony studied mediocre, often brought home unsatisfactory marks. But his parents did not scold him for this, again and again hired tutors, hoping that the guy will pass the state exams well and will be able to enter the university. Angelica was most of all worried about her son's future. Sometimes when they were alone, Angelica would say to her husband, "You must support Anthony, get the support of acquaintances to get him into the institute if he does not get a passing grade." "I'm not sure about that," John replied. "Why not?" His wife was getting nervous. "First of all, it's very ugly. I will go to the offices of officials and ask for a guy. The way you see it, don't you think it's humiliating for me? And second of all, stop patronizing him. I know you're gonna say your son's gonna be a kid for the rest of your life, but he's an adult. He's got to take care of his own future." John could still give many arguments, but noticing the tears in the eyes of his wife, he instantly stopped her upset. He promised that he would do everything. Anthony would go to university. Meanwhile, the time of exams was approaching. Angelica was worried because recently she had been summoned to school by the class teacher of her son and daughter. The teacher was worried about Dima's progress. "He does not do his homework at all," she complained to the mother of her pupil. "He almost doesn't work at lessons." At the blackboard, he answers uncertainly, "I understand that he is no longer a first grader, but we still need to supervise Anthony. Please pay attention to this." Angelica and John went to the graduation ceremony together. Today, their children will receive the main document, which in many ways will determine their future fate. "BT is the pride of our school," said the principal, presenting the girl with a certificate of full secondary education and a gold medal. His document was full of threes. This upset Angelica very much. At home, she started talking to her husband again so that he could get her son into the institute using his connections. "Listen, Angelica," John said affectionately, "with such grades and unwillingness to learn, maybe he should go to a technical school." "Why?" "He'll get a profession and go to work. That way he'll be self-sufficient." Angelica sighed. She realized that her husband was right. Anthony didn't show any ability in school. And what made her think that the boy would do well in the institute? Or what? John would have to address every session to influential acquaintances so that professors put his son credits and good grades. In the end, Angelica agreed. Anthony enrolled in college. Beatty realized her dream, enrolled in the Academy of Painting, and went to New York. For the parents of adult children in life, nothing has changed, except that the apartment became quiet, quarrels and fights stopped. His future bride Anthony met in college. The girl finished 9 grades in her small town and went to the capital for a beautiful life. The guy met with her for a year, but did not tell his parents anything. Recently, the father felt badly. Doctors even recommended that he go to the hospital, but the man refused. "No way, lying in a hospital bed is not for me." He was very worried about his daughter. Betty was studying and living away from home. She didn't come to visit, not even for vacations. She didn't call herself, and when her parents dialed her number, she spoke one-wordedly and reluctantly. She was offended at them for the fact that all her life they had been protecting her brother, indulging him in everything. And now, at his age, many people already work or work part-time, as she herself, selling paintings, and this brat continues to sit on his parents' necks. John has long wanted to hint to his son that it is time to become independent, but each time postponed this conversation, so as not to worry his wife. Angelica did not seem to notice that Anthony was no longer a snotty boy, but a grown man. When she heard the sound of the door opening, she rushed to the kitchen to heat Anthony's dinner, always gave money for expenses, although her husband forbade her to spoil her offspring. When John heard that she was slipping her son money again, he grumbled. Betty herself lives away from us, sells her paintings, for all this time has not asked for a dime, and Anthony, you always patronize like a small child. Come on, he's got to start being a man. What is it with you and Betty? If she wants to live away from her parents' home, let her do so, Angelica shrieked. Anthony had been getting it from her all his life, like a cat and a dog. Let him enjoy peace of mind now. Didn't you slip money to Violet quietly? And now surely, at the first opportunity, you transfer it to her card. Don't compare, Angelica. Anthony's a man. He should act like one, not sit under his mother's skirt. John was angry. His face instantly turned a shade of purple. He wasn't. Angelica continued to defend her son. She was offended that her husband was hitting on her favorite. He is studying, getting a profession as you wanted. You will get a diploma, will go to work, and now it is already hard for him. Well, of course your Democrat is having a hard time doing things that other people don't have a problem with. And all you? John suddenly grabbed his heart, fell on the sofa. What's the matter with you? His wife ran around him. You're not well. Archie? Wait, I will now bring medicine from the kitchen. The woman ran away, took out the medicine cabinet, quickly went through the pills and vials with medicines, poured a glass of water. When she returned to the living room, the spouse was dead. The paramedics declared a heart attack. Betty arrived on the day of the funeral. She entered the apartment quietly. The mirrors in the rooms were covered with black scarves. Her mother sat at the table, unmoving. Hello, Mother, the girl said. Angelica didn't even turn her head. Betty came closer, put her arm around her mother's shoulders, said quietly, Hold on. But Angelica pulled away from her. At the funeral, she didn't shed a tear. She just stood there in silence. When the coffin was lowered into the grave, she came up and threw a clod of earth first. She walked slowly away. Anthony followed her. Betty waited until the cross was placed on the grave and placed a large basket of red carnations at the headboard. The wake was held at home, with only family and a few of John's co-workers in attendance. Everyone said something nice about the deceased. Betty decided to speak up. Daddy was a wonderful man. He was loved and respected by everyone. He was an authority in the service and an authority in the family for us, his children. It was you who killed him, Angelica said, raising her eyes to her daughter. Those sitting at the table looked at the woman in surprise. It was because of you he was worried, and his sick heart could not stand it. You wagged your tail at the first opportunity to go far away and left your father and mother, and now you say that you loved him. That's what loving children do. A murderer of your own father. That's what you are. Mom, what are you saying? Exclaimed Betty. Why are you calling me Daddy's killer? Because you were the reason we argued the day he died. You made him so nervous that his heart couldn't take it. You tore his heart to shreds. I will never forgive you. Angelica dropped her head in her hands and Betty ran out of the house. The guests one by one quietly got up and left. They had witnessed a disgusting scene. Angelica had observed a year's mourning for her husband. For a year, she and her son went to visit his father's grave. While removing the weeds, the woman lamented, You should know how hard it is for us without you, my darling. Anthony and I are all alone. Ariana's gone to her village, and I'm all alone on the farm. Your Betty hasn't called at all. She didn't even come to the grave. She didn't bring flowers for her father, your favorite. Angelica, lost in herself, did not even notice how Betty quietly approached the fence, red roses in her hands. Hello, Mother, she said through force, as if it would be very difficult to pronounce the words. Ah, you're here, said her mother angrily. I guess her conscience had gotten the better of her. Come on, Anthony. They left, and Betty put the flowers on the grave, took a rag out of the bag, wiped the monument of dust. She had something to tell her father. A few months ago, Betty had given birth to a son. They say that if someone passes away in the same year and another person is born, he or she will make up for the loss by replacing the grieving relatives of the deceased, Betty said, referring to the photograph on the monument. Billy makes me feel better, Daddy. He looks a lot like you, his grandfather. Ah, if you had seen him, you would have loved my baby and your grandson very much. The next morning at home, Angelica put the mourning bandage back on her head. Anthony, who came out for breakfast, shook his head sadly. Mom, maybe you should stop grieving for your father. You can't bring him back. He took a piece of bread, calmly spread butter, and put 2 slices of cheese on top. All the more so because I have important news for you, which I've been wanting to share with you for a long time. I've been hesitating because I've seen how much you've been hurting for Daddy." "What's the news, son?" Angelica asked. "I have a girlfriend. We've been dating for a long time. We met in college." The boy's eyes shone at the memory of his beloved. "Her name is Selena, and she is very beautiful." The mother smiled, stroking her son's head. "The girl must be very beautiful indeed, since my Anthony's eyes are shining so much," she thought. "Tomorrow, I want you to meet her. Will you cook something nice for dinner?" "Of course, son. Bring her to our house. And do not worry about dinner and treats." Angelica suddenly felt that this news began to warm her soul. Her son had fallen in love, and maybe soon he would marry. She would have a daughter-in-law who would help her mother-in-law take care of Anthony and Angelica herself. All the next day she fussed in the kitchen. Angelica was baking meat in the oven, chopping salads, and on the table was a pan of dough for Anthony and his beloved sweet cherry pie. The woman thought about the fact that her son was all grown up. He already had a girlfriend. If everything goes well, soon there may be grandchildren. Angelica heard the sound of the door opening. She quickly took off her apron, hurried to meet her son and the guest. Anthony introduced his beloved. "Meet Mom, this is Selena, my fiancée. And this is my mom, Angelica." The guy was glowing with happiness. His mother smiled too. "I'm very happy, Selena. Come into the hall." The girl was really very beautiful. Dark blonde hair fell from her shoulders in elastic curls. Her chiseled figure immediately attracted the eye. Selena threw off her high-heeled shoes and followed Anthony. While the woman set the table, Selena and her son looked at the pictures in the family photo album. Angelica paused for a moment when she saw a picture of the family with her now-deceased husband and Betty, who had left them on a trip to the sea. The woman felt a little sad at the memory, but she tried to banish the unhappy thoughts from her mind, because today was a very important day when her son was introducing her to his girlfriend for the first time. At dinner, Angelica decided to ask Selena about her parents. Not that she cared what kind of family she was from or what mom and dad did. She just needed to keep the conversation going. "I'm from a small town. My mom and dad are simple people. My mom sells clothes at the market and my dad works as a construction foreman," Selena answered without a shadow of embarrassment. "There is no place to study there, so I came here and met Anthony." The girl looked at the guy in love, but it seemed to Angelica that she did it theatrically, naively, not sincerely. Then she tried to change the subject. "And what will you work after graduating from college?" Selena asked Dima's mother. "Mom, well, why are you attached to the girl? Let me eat in peace." Anthony tried to spare Selena from his mom's questioning. "Nothing wrong. Just your mom wants to get to know me better," interrupted his girlfriend. "In general, by education, I will be a technologist for sewing outerwear. But frankly, I do not want to work in the specialty. I think that a wife should spend more time with her husband, not to earn money." The word wife cut Angelica's ear. She thought that the girl had far-reaching plans. She already sees herself as her son's wife. On the one hand, there was nothing wrong with that, but on the other hand, Angelica was not very pleased. She didn't understand why, but something was weighing on her. Selena seemed fake to her, like a doll that looks at you with a smile from a store window with beautiful eyes, but there is no human warmth in them. Anthony noticed how his mother's face changed when she heard the words husband and wife. He decided to take the lead in the conversation. "Yes, Mom, Selena and I are planning to get married. Next week, we're going to apply at the registry office. We've already picked a date too. We'll get married right after we graduate from college. Maybe we should get a job first, start earning money to organize a wedding banquet, for example." "Actually, to marry a son is the responsibility of his parents," intervened in the dialogue of Angelica and Duma Selena. "It's always been done that way. Parents marry their children, so to speak, give their blessing, play the wedding, and then the young begin to build their own life." Angelica did not understand what so much corrupted her behavior, in words, even in the tone of the girl. And it was pointless to argue. In the past, always arranged weddings parents, but Angelica is already retired. Her husband has long been in the grave. There are, of course, some savings and money in the account, which the husband was saving for a trouble-free old age. But just skip the financial safety cushion is, at least, stupid and not thought out. Angelica had no intention of spending the money from the stash. "Tell me, Selena," she asked the girl, "do your parents know that you are getting married? Are they going to be involved in organizing the wedding? Are they going to give you money for it?" The girl's cheeks flashed scarlet. It was obvious that she was uncomfortable with the question. They'll know when we apply. Why talk before the time? And they'll give us money. Where will they go? I'm their only daughter. If you want, Anthony and I will calculate everything and provide an estimate, and you and my parents will invest 50-50. I think that's okay. Well, it's okay. It's okay. Angelica tried to change the subject of the conversation, which was beginning to heat up the atmosphere at the table. And how do you spend your free time, Selena? She asked. I go out with my friends. Sometimes we go to the club to dance and relax. The girl began to list her entertainment, and Angelica thought, rest. It's strange. It's what today's young people are so tired of. She clearly did not like the choice of her son, but the woman decided that Anthony has the right to choose his own wife, and since he loves Selena, it means that there is a reason. Angelica got ready to clear the table and asked Selena to help. We'll bring the cake and the tea set and have tea, Anthony's mother said, trying to look benevolent. Mom, let me help you myself, suddenly volunteered the son. The boy grabbed the plates and carried them to the kitchen. What do you think of her? Isn't she a wonderful girl? Wonderful, Angelica said thoughtfully. She didn't want to upset her son, didn't want to quarrel with him. The woman thought that there was still time to open Anthony's eyes to his girlfriend. And the first meeting should not be marred by squabbles and finding out who was right. After tea and cake, the young people left. I'll see Selena off and come back. Don't be bored, Anthony told his mother. Angelica had no time to be bored. She began to wash the dishes, all the while wondering what was so alarming, so repulsive about this girl with the model looks. She should be glad. Anthony would have a very beautiful wife. Not every man could boast of that. He will enjoy going out with her for walks, appearing in the companies of friends, visiting theaters, going on vacation. Not stopping to think about her son, Angelica prepared to go to bed. When Anthony returned, she did not hear, falling into a heavy sleep. The wedding was played at the end of June. After receiving his diploma, Anthony got a job in a large construction company. He did it not without the help of his mother. Angelica all her life tried to push her son through at the expense of her husband's acquaintances. This time she called one influential official, with whom John had once worked, and asked for a favor. A friend of her late husband did not refuse, having learned that the guy is going to start a family, was happy for him and promised. I'll find a suitable position for him. Don't worry, Angelica. I understand. Now is such a time. Who else will help children to get on their feet, as not parents? He kept his promise. Anthony had been going to work every morning for 2 weeks. His mother carefully prepared breakfast for him and waited for him at dinner in the evening. But most of the time Anthony went to Selena's house right after work. We have a lot to discuss about the upcoming wedding, he told his mother over the phone. Go to bed. Don't wait up for me. The future bride and groom made a guest list. Looking at it, Angelica asked, why didn't you invite Daddy's friends with their wives, son? Why, Mom? They are not our relatives. We almost do not communicate. And that Selena has so many relatives that I see only them in the list? The woman, perplexed, looked at the unfamiliar names. It's good to have a lot of relatives. We have only Betty and Ariana. Nanny has always been like family to us, but she's old and won't go this far, and there's no point in inviting Valpet if you've quarreled. Let's not spoil the party, Anthony said. Oh yes, Mammy, I was wondering if you withdrawn the money from the account. We have to pay for the restaurant, the photographer, the host, and Selena wants us to take a white limousine to the registry office. Angelica sighed. Her son had been telling her for days that he needed money. She'd given him everything in the house, but she didn't want to touch the account her husband had left behind when he died. Maybe you'll get an advance at work, she asked her son. You can spend it on a limousine. What's an advance, Mom? Anthony waved his hands. It's just cents, and we want everything to be upscale. And Selena's parents? Angelica tried to cut back again. Why don't they give money for their daughter's whims? They agreed to pay half, Anthony said, but right now they're in temporary difficulties. They will be given installments later, after the wedding. Interesting, so the wedding is on me, thought a frustrated Angelica. In order not to upset her son on the eve of such an important event for him, she promised that tomorrow she would go to the bank and bring the necessary amount. The restaurant was noisy, the guests were partying, the tables were bursting with food and wine was pouring. The next day, Anthony asked his mother for more money. You see, we realized that we should definitely go on a wedding trip, he told his mother. Selena has never been to the sea in her life, so we want to go to a resort for a week. Don't you think that's too much?" Angelica asked. It does not seem. Feeling that his mother is against their idea, Anthony pouted his lips, began to take offense. "We are so tired from the wedding preparations, from the noise and the numerous guests, that we must have a rest and relax. So ask her parents for money," Angelica said, starting to get annoyed. They promised to give half of the money spent on the wedding. At that moment, Selena entered the kitchen, where the mother and son were talking. It was obvious from her face that she had heard everything. "Honey, your mom just wants us to go to work before we get married, working from morning till night. Is that the beginning of a happy family?" "I don't mind your vacation," Angelique said, barely restraining herself from telling her sister-in-law that it was wrong to eavesdrop. "Just pay for it yourself or ask your parents." "Mom, well, I told you, Selena's parents have temporary financial difficulties, sided with his young wife Anthony, and your father left you money. You have it. I know it is in the bank and does not bring any benefit, except for the meager interest. Why not give it to us for our wedding trip? Don't you want us to be happy?" Angelica has already realized where the wind is blowing from. Selena puts her wishes into Anthony's head, and he, in love to the point of madness, blinded by his feeling, runs to fulfill them. And the fact that they will be happy, it's still an old saying, as old people say. With such a wife would rather go to the world than find a normal full-fledged family. With a heavy heart, Angelica went to the bank. When she saw the envelope with money, Anthony rejoiced, kissed his mother on the cheek, and ran into the room to make his young wife happy. Angelica spent the week that they were vacationing at a fashionable resort, thinking. The apartment was quiet. No one prevented her from indulging in memories of her husband and thinking about the future of her son. Having returned from a wedding trip, the young began to take apart the suitcases with excitement. "We brought so many gifts to everyone," chirped daughter-in-law, taking out beautiful silk scarves, alcohol, some sweets, other things. "So this is for my mother, this is for my aunts, this is for my friends. And you too, Angelica, we have not forgotten." The girl handed her mother-in-law a magnet with the image of the resort where they vacationed. "Here, hang on the fridge, you will remember our wedding trip." Joyfully, she said. Mother-in-law took the magnet, twirled in her hands, calmly went to the kitchen and stuck the gift on the refrigerator door. She did not want to go back to the young people. She poured tea and sat by the window. The next day, when Anthony left for work, the daughter-in-law said to her mother-in-law, "I think it's time for you to move to the cottage." "Why not?" Angelica wondered. "I live here, this is my apartment, and I go to the dacha when there is a desire to be in the fresh air. Moreover, summer will soon pass. What will I do there?" "What do you mean?" My daughter-in-law made big rounded eyes. "Like all pensioners, sit by the TV, relax, knit socks after all. I'm not going anywhere from my apartment, don't even count on it." Cut off mother-in-law. "If you want, yourself move to the dacha. This is not only your apartment, but also my husband," hissed like an angry snake, Selena. "So we have the right to decide how we live and who will be next to us. Don't you realize that young people are uncomfortable at night when you are behind the wall?" "The conversation is over," Angelica said and went to her room. She was shocked by her unscrupulous daughter-in-law's demand to leave her 5-room apartment. There was more than enough room for 3. Angelica's childhood had passed here, her happy life with her beloved husband. She had a lot of ties with this apartment, and now some bimbo is going to kick her out of her home. In the evening, coming home from work, Anthony attacked his mother. Apparently, Selena had already complained to him about her mother-in-law. "What's the news, Mom?" he shouted. "Selena told me that you are forcing us to move out of the apartment, to live at the cottage. You can imagine how inconvenient it is 2 hours to get to work, and Selena even has to take the train to go to the store and then come back with full bags. It's very cruel. I'm your son. I have a right to live in my own apartment, and you shouldn't kick us out." Having caught a pause in her son's monologue, Angelica managed to say, "I did not kick anyone out. It is your wife demanded that I moved out to the country house. So it's quite reasonable. Selena's right. At the cottage you will be calmer, and we will come on weekends, bring groceries. Did it ever occur to you that I have my own hand on my shoulders? Why it is a stranger to me girl should dictate how and where I live?" Angelica was indignant. "A stranger?" Anthony looked offended. "So my Selena is a stranger to you? I didn't think you'd say that, Mom." Anthony walked out and slammed the door. The summer and then the fall flew by. Angelica tried not to notice her daughter-in-law, though she did her best to constantly clash with her mother-in-law. She skillfully ignited conflicts and then complained to Anthony that his mother had lost her mind. For example, today she was cleaning the whole apartment, but she did not even deign to clean the floor and wipe the dust in his and Anthony's room. My mother-in-law thinks that we can live in filth like pigs in a stable, Selena complained to her husband. Or yesterday I put my plate in the sink, and then your mom had lunch. So she washed her plate, and mine defiantly left it lying there dirty. Your mother does everything to make our lives a nightmare. Anthony would run over to my mom's house and start a fight. Why don't you dust our room at the same time? Didn't you have the energy to wash an extra plate? You know, son, take care of yourself, Angelique replied. Your wife can also calmly take a bucket and a rag, mop the floor. A good daughter-in-law would have cleaned the whole apartment herself to help her mother-in-law. Ah, I'm also a bad wife, screamed Selena. The girl was eavesdropping in the hallway, leaning against the doorjamb. Your mother is out of line. She wants to divorce us. With a reproachful look at her mother, Anthony rushed to comfort the theatrically wringing his hands and let a fake tear of the young wife. One day, Angelica saw her son packing a suitcase. She was frightened. Were the newlyweds going to move out? She was not ready to lose her son. Concerned, the woman asked, "Are you going somewhere, son?" "Yes, Mom. They're sending me on a business trip. I will often go to the neighboring town. Our company has a new facility there, supervised by me," Anthony replied. "It's a promotion, you know. The salary will be higher." Angelica was happy for her son. She hugged him, then looked out the window. A snowstorm was blowing. Winter had started unexpectedly fast. A lot of snow fell at once, and the weather brought surprises in the form of cold wind and frost. "Be sure to take a warm sweater," her mother said thoughtfully. "You'll probably spend a lot of time outdoors. God forbid you catch a cold." The woman gave her son a knitted sweater, and he put it in his suitcase. "Thank you," Anthony thanked his mother. "Do you know where Selena is?" "I don't know. She left this afternoon, still not here. I asked her to get some milk. I wanted to make you some pancakes." "I'll call her a reminder, don't worry," Anthony reassured Angelica. He sat the woman on the couch, sat down next to her and hugged her. At that moment, she felt the warmth of a loved one again. The mother laid her hand on her son's shoulder. He married early and chose the wrong girl to be happy, she thought. Lately, she had been feeling that Anthony was suffering, that not everything in their relationship with Selena was as smooth as he would like it to be. Her sister-in-law returned late. From the doorstep, Anthony began to ask her why she had come at such a late hour and where she had been. At a friend's house, the young wife said to her husband, "It had been a long time since we had seen each other, so we chatted a little, but we didn't notice how the time flew by. The subway was already closed, so we had to take a cab back. Mom asked you to buy milk." Anthony saw that his wife was holding nothing but a handbag. "As if I had time to go shopping," Selena replied rudely. "Couldn't she have bought it herself?" "Mom's not feeling well. You know she has blood pressure." "Well, nothing. Do not pout at me," tried to soften the tone of the girl. "We'll do without milk today. Especially it's late. It's time to sleep." The next day, her son left on a business trip. From the morning, Angelica had a bad headache. She took a pill, tied a towel on her head to reduce the throbbing in her temples, and lay down and dozed off. After a while, Angelica woke up to a loud noise. The woman got up with difficulty, went to the kitchen. Her sister-in-law was slamming cupboard doors, dropped a pot from the stove, bent over, looking for something in the refrigerator. "What's going on?" Angelica asked. "Why are you making so much noise?" "I just lay down. My head hurts a lot, pressure apparently." "You're asking what's going on?" Selena yelled at her mother-in-law. "I woke up, I wanted to eat, and the house is empty." "It's lunchtime and you haven't cooked anything yet. Are you trying to starve me to death?" "You noticed right, trying to speak quietly," said the mother-in-law. "It's lunchtime, and you, noble woman, only deign to get out of bed." "I don't feel well. Cook something yourself." "So there are no products. I've already searched everything. I wanted at least fried eggs with sausage and tomatoes," resented daughter-in-law. "What did you do half a day that you could not go to the store and buy groceries?" "I told you in normal language I'm not feeling well," tried to call her daughter-in-law to compassion mother-in-law, but as if she did not hear that the woman needs help. "Why am I doing all this?" She continued to shout and swear. My husband is not home all the time, so I still have to take care of his sick mother. Well, no, you old hag, you won't get it from me. Selena shoved Angelica in anger. The woman's eyes blurred, she fell down, lost consciousness. The daughter-in-law was afraid she had killed her mother-in-law. She cautiously approached, bent slightly over the woman. Angelica, are you alive? Hearing no answer, she picked up the phone and called an ambulance. Lying in bed in the hospital room, Angelica thought back on everything that had happened to her since Anthony had brought Selena into their home. The elderly woman's life had become a nightmare. The constant swearing, the daughter-in-law complaining about her mother-in-law, the tantrums. No, this is not how she imagined her quiet old age. Angelica thought that the son would help her, and the daughter-in-law would become a second daughter, Betty. Angelica's daughter does not call, does not ask how her mother lives. She does not even know that Anthony is married to this unscrupulous girl. Soon another anniversary of John's death, will Angelica be able to recover, to gain strength to go to the grave? There she would be able to cry, share her troubles with her husband, and maybe find the answer to her life. There was a soft knock on the ward. The door opened, and a short man with a bulging tummy entered. "May I?" he asked and went to Angelica's bed. "Angelica Dmitrievna, how is your precious health?" Harry asked in his usual Jewish manner of speaking. "Hello, dear Harry," the woman rejoiced. No one came to see her, so she was glad that she would be able not only to do what she had planned, but also to talk to her late husband's friend. The notary pulled a chair over to the woman's bed, sat down, and placed a plump leather folder on his lap. Angelica politely inquired about Harry's affairs. He shook his head, shaking his head. There were inheritances or marriage contracts. It's always a notary's job to get the paperwork right, and I suppose you've called me here on business too. "Yes, dear Harry," the woman said. "I think I'll be following John soon." "Oh, don't be silly, you blooming thing." The man waved his hands at her. "Did he call you from there?" "It's too early, too early." "So what is your business with me?" Angelica asked the man to raise the pillow higher so that she could have sit up. She was more comfortable that way. She shared the latest news with her husband's old friend. She complained about her daughter-in-law. "My son's wife is a completely unscrupulous person," Angelica said. "She needs only money and our square meters in the center of the capital. Do you understand now what kind of a snake my son has sheltered?" "I understand," replied the notary. "I suppose you want to make a will for Anthony?" "Not quite," the woman replied, surprising Harry. "I think she wants to kill me. My son is like a blind kitten, blind to everything, trusting his Selena unconditionally, and I don't feel safe. That's why I thought I'd invite you, my dear." She told of her plans. The man's eyebrows rose up in surprise, then frowned, then fell back into place. In the end, he sketched a preliminary version of the will on paper and gave it to Angelica to read. "Yes," said the woman, handing the paper back to the notary. "It's exactly what I wanted." "To tell the truth, Angelica, you managed to surprise the old Jew," Harry said, putting the paper back in the folder. "But I will do your will. Everything will be in the best possible way. Don't worry. I don't want to harm your health." The man said goodbye to Angelica, bowed politely to her roommates and left. The woman closed her eyes and tried to sleep. She was awakened by her son's voice. "Mom, how are you?" Anthony sat next to her in a chair. He took his mother's hand. "I came straight to the hospital when I heard what happened to you. You can't go to all that trouble. Selena told me everything." "What everything?" The mother didn't understand. "How you lifted a heavy pot and fell. It's good that my wife was home, called you an ambulance and went to the hospital with you. I am so grateful to her." The son stroked his mother's arm, looked at her tenderly. "I brought you some fruit. I'm sorry, Selena wanted to make you something to eat, but I didn't wait, I rushed straight to you. She's so upset that no one will feed you here." Angelica listened to all this news about her son's caring wife and could not believe her ears. What a hypocrite that Selena is. She put noodles on Anthony's ears, and now she is all in chocolate. She cares about her mother-in-law like a mother. "Don't worry, the food here is tolerable." Angelica tried to calm her son. "Sometimes Nurse Natalie comes to me. She feeds me from a spoon." "Thank her. She's a good girl who helps patients she doesn't know," Anthony said. "Well, you get better. I gotta go. Selena and I were going shopping. You know, it turns out she doesn't have any decent winter clothes at all. I'll come back tomorrow. Bye, Mom." The son kissed his mother on the cheek and headed for the door. and Angelica thought with pain in her heart that her son was already the third winter in the same jacket. But he didn't think about himself. He was dressing up his young wife. The next day, Anthony didn't come to see his mother. He didn't call until the next day, late at night. "Mom, how are you?" He shouted into the phone, trying to shout over the sound of loud music playing. "I'm sorry I didn't come to see you. It's just that it's my colleague's birthday, so we're celebrating. I could not go. I'd have hurt a good man." "Will you come tomorrow, son?" Angelica asked. "It won't work, Mom. I'm going on a business trip to the site again tomorrow." "I'm sorry." Anthony disconnected. There were short beeps in the phone. Angelica spent a month in the hospital. Gradually, her motor functions recovered. At rounds, the doctor said that she was making progress in her recovery and joked cheerfully. "Soon you will run with your legs, dearie, but for now just rest and follow my recommendations." "Yes, I must have run away. I must have," said Angelica sadly. "Now here is not to go to the cottage, what I will do there, if I can barely move, and on the grave to her husband." "And you do not give up. Hope for the best always gives a good result," soothed the woman doctor. "Everything will be fine with us." On the day of discharge, Anthony arrived at the hospital. Before going up to his mother's room, he went to see her doctor. "Tell me, doctor, can Mom recover completely?" The doctor noticed that the guy is worried about his mother. "Absolutely. Don't even doubt it," the doctor replied. "We have treated her well. Now it's up to you." "What do you mean? It's up to us?" Anthony didn't understand. "Angelica needs care, rest, and massage. Of course, good nutrition. It is very important because the patient's body is weakened." The doctor gave some more recommendations on how to take care of the patient, signed some papers, and allowed Anthony to take his mother home. His son brought her to the exit from the hospital in a wheelchair, and further to the car they walked in small steps, taking short breaks so that Angelica could rest. The boy realized that it would be difficult to get home with his sick mother by public transport, so he called a cab. Looking at how his mother could barely move her legs, he thought, "It's good that the house has an elevator, otherwise, how would we with her up the stairs?" At home, he helped her undress and put her to bed. "You rest, and I'll make something to eat," Anthony said. "I bought a bag of dumplings. All that's left is to boil them." "Where's your wife, son?" Angelica asked. "She went to a friend. They are planning where to go on vacation for the new year." Heard the voice of the son, who went to the kitchen to cook himself, and his mother bought dumplings. Angelica noted with annoyance that her daughter-in-law did not care about her son at all. She has only entertainment on her mind, which requires serious expenses. When the woman entered the apartment, she noticed that the house was not tidy. Things were lying on the floor, and in the hallway stood unpacked suitcase of her son, which he took on a business trip. The mother felt bad for Anthony, but she also felt bad for herself that she hadn't been able to persuade him to marry that slut when he first brought her into their home. She should have insisted, should have opened Anthony's eyes that this young woman would not make him happy. That's where she lurks when a sick mother-in-law and a hungry son need help. Anthony returned to his mother's bedroom with a plate of hot dumplings. He helped the woman sit up in bed, adjusted the pillow. The son took care of his mother as best he could. It was clumsy, the dumplings were boiled, and the piece of bread he had brought was obviously not fresh. Angelica was worried that she could not yet go into the kitchen, knead the dough with the former ease, bake Anthony's favorite cherry pie. "It's delicious," she said, pushing the plate away. "You've only had 3 dumplings. Let's have some more." Anthony encouraged her with his cooking skills. No, Angelica refused. "I've had enough. I'm full." She told her son once again that the food was very good, so as not to upset him. The woman saw that he was already concerned about the absence of his wife and did not want to aggravate the situation. She needed peace to get well. And as soon as she recovered, she would restore order in the apartment and in the life of her beloved son. Through her sleep, she heard Selena return. She was loudly telling Anthony that she and her friend had chosen a boarding house outside the city, where there was a huge list of spa procedures. They should definitely go there for New Year's Eve. Anthony asked her to speak quietly because her mother was sleeping in the bedroom, but she didn't care. She continued gibbering without lowering the tone of her voice. "Would your mother give us money for the trip?" she asked her husband. Anthony was confused. Before leaving on the business trip, he had brought Selena 6 months' salary and bonuses. Had the money run out so quickly? "Do you think I'm eating air while you're traveling around your facilities?" pouted the girl. And your mother to go to the hospital to feed I had to do what? Buy groceries, fruit, vitamins. If it wasn't for me, she would have been in the hospital for months. Calm down, Anthony told her. I just thought we have enough money for the party and the groceries, and we could put it aside. I didn't think I'd marry a man who would count every cent I spent and make me account for it. Selena took offense at her husband. Well, all right, Anthony tried to hug her. I'll try to think of something so that you and your friend can go to your spa treatments. What's the date of the trip? January 11, Selena answered. She was already smiling and kissing her husband. Anthony was thinking, calculating something. I'm sorry, darling, he said. On the 11th, I'm going on a business trip for a week. So what? Continuing to purr in the ear of her spouse, Selena asked. My friend and I are going without you. It is understandable, but with whom will stay mom? She needs care and supervision, said Anthony. Selena got really angry. Now Angelica didn't even have to listen to hear her daughter-in-law's every word from her bedroom. What is this? She shouted. No sooner had I gotten married, and they've already given me an invalid. I wasn't hired to be a caregiver. I dreamed of a happy life with you and me, and what did I get? Endless days with an elderly mother-in-law. How can you talk about my mother like that? Anthony said indignantly. We can wait a little longer. She'll get better, and we can go wherever we want. You must realize that you can't leave her alone. So get a nurse or a nurse. Selena kept shouting. Darling, I have no more money. I gave you everything, and you, apparently, have already spent my salary and bonuses. Oh, you're also scolding me with every cent. Selena took quick steps towards her and her husband's room. That's it. I'm done. I'm packing up and going to my parents. They've never denied me anything. Anthony rushed to stop her. He promised that she would definitely go, but a little later, and he would find the money. Realizing that at home in her small town, a gray, joyless life without beautiful things and entertainment awaited the girl, Selena gradually calmed down and began to arrange the things she had already managed to throw in the suitcase, back on the shelves in the closet. Mammy, good morning, greeted Angelica Anthony, entering her room. I'd overslept, Selena, and I went to bed late last night. I'm in a hurry to get to work. Selena will feed you, and then the masseuse will come in the afternoon. Okay, son, the woman replied. The daughter-in-law was in no hurry to feed her mother-in-law breakfast. She turned on loud music, took a long shower. Having cleaned herself up, Selena went to the kitchen. She decided not to anger her husband. She saw that his nerves are already at the limit, and there was no time to quarrel. Selena saw in the jewelry catalog charming gold earrings with sapphires and really wanted to get them for the new year. Anthony had asked to feed his mother, so she was going to make something. The girl looked around the kitchen, opened the door of the overhead cabinet. It was almost completely empty. Selena found half a bag of buckwheat groats. Great, I'll make her buckwheat porridge, and then I'll go down to the cafe and have breakfast there myself, she thought. The girl took milk out of the refrigerator and poured it into a pot. At the same moment, she smelled a disgusting sour odor. The milk was spoiled. After a little hesitation, Selena made a decision. She'll eat it. Nothing will happen to her mother-in-law. She opened the window to let the smell of sour milk escape, boiled some porridge, put a few spoonfuls of buckwheat in a bowl, and went to Angelica's room. How is your mood? Asked her sister-in-law, putting a friendly smile on her face. Good, the mother-in-law replied quietly. And I've made you breakfast, Selena continued to say, smiling. She handed Angelica a plate and a spoon. The woman ate a couple of spoonfuls as suddenly she got muddy, vomited and flowed on the pillow, stained the sheet and blanket. What is this? Indignantly shouted at her mother-in-law girl. How long will you make fun of me? Now I'll have to clean it all up. The food is spoiled, Selena. The porridge is sour. Coming to her senses, Angelica said. Nothing is not spoiled. The daughter-in-law tried to keep herself in control. She decided not to quarrel with her mother-in-law, so that she, seeing how Selena takes care of her, gave money. Let's get this all cleaned up now. Selena helped the woman up, sitting her down on the bed. She pulled a clean set of linens from the closet, made the bed neatly, took the dirty one into the bathroom. When she returned, Selena changed Angelica's nightgown and tucked her back into bed. The girl sat down next to her. I guess you're right, the porridge did smell strange, Selena began to say in an angelic voice. I'm sorry, I didn't see it coming. Are you feeling better? Angelica was surprised at the change in her daughter-in-law's behavior and voice. "Better, don't worry," she replied. "If you want, I'll bring you hot donuts from the coffee shop." The girl jumped up, showing readiness to run for a treat for her mother-in-law. Unexpectedly, Angelica smiled at her daughter-in-law's behavior. "I do," she said, "and I also want to drink sweet tea with you together. Hurry back." "I'll be right back," shouted the daughter-in-law from somewhere in the corridor. Selena and Blake stretched for an hour, although the coffee shop she mentioned was on the corner of their house. But Angelica waited patiently for the promised donuts and tea. When her sister-in-law returned, the woman was reading a book. Selena pushed the coffee table over to the bed, brought cups and a hot teapot, and placed the sweets on a plate. "Here," she said solemnly, pleased with herself, "I bought donuts and eclairs. Help yourselves." Selena looked like she was in a good mood and was not going to quarrel with her mother-in-law. The daughter-in-law helped her mother-in-law to rise, gave her a cup of tea. The girl herself sat down next to her on a chair. To Angelica's surprise, they had a pleasant conversation. Selena seemed to have been replaced. She was smiling, friendly, not trying to offend or insult her mother-in-law. "I never asked how you met my Anthony," my mother-in-law asked. "Can you tell me?" "Sure. It's a very funny story," began the daughter-in-law. "I was waiting for a guy from our group. We were friends. His name was Frederick, and he was supposed to bring me some notes. I saw him standing there, wearing a white sweater with reindeer on it. I crept up quietly and covered his eyes with my palms from behind. He turned around, and then I see that in front of me stands a complete stranger guy, very handsome with kind eyes. And he was smiling, not understanding what kind of girl so suddenly jumped up to him. So we met." Mother-in-law and daughter-in-law laughed at the ridiculous situation. They had fun. Selena turned out to be not a bad girl at all, Angelica thought. Perhaps what they had had before was just the usual melding of generations who had to exist in the same space, share their household, and put up with their habits. Suddenly, Angelica thought about it and said, "I was introduced to my late husband by my father. They were colleagues. John looked after me for a long time, but when my parents died, he married me immediately to protect and care for me. He treated me like a precious Chinese porcelain vase all my life, never hurt me in word or deed. Oh, Selena, I miss him so much. And how worried I am that I won't be able to come to his grave on the anniversary of his death." Selena too sat with a pensive look, but there were completely different thoughts in her mind. "Why can't you?" she asked her mother-in-law. "Why, I can hardly move around the house, and here I have to go to the cemetery by train, then walk for a long time. It's unthinkable." "But you will feel guilty for not having been to the grave," said Selena sympathetically, "and you cannot be nervous and worried now. You need positive emotions and peace of mind to recover. Let me take you to the cemetery." The proposal of her sister-in-law was unexpected for Angelica, but pleasant. "How will you take me? Because you don't have a car, and on the train you'll make a mess with me," asked her mother-in-law. "I have a good friend from college, so I'll ask him. We used to be friends. He will not refuse me," assured Angelica. "Thank you." The mother-in-law took her daughter-in-law's hand and stroked her dry palm gratefully. Celine basked in Frederick's arms. He was a great lover, not like her Anthony. Except that he didn't work anywhere, spent a lot of time in bars and clubs, constantly asking her friend for money. Sometimes, when the girl's husband was on business trips, Selena went to have fun with Frederick. She herself paid all the bills in the club, and he paid her with caresses and sex, from which the girl was breathtaking. You should have known what it took for me to put up with that hag's talk. And when I made her bed, I almost ran to the toilet myself. Can you imagine? That old gal pooped on the bed too, disgusting woman. And you bear with it, advised her lover, pressing her to his chest. And no matter what hour, your husband will kick you out of the house, you will be left without a luxurious apartment and without money. What will we have fun with then? I try, but it's so unbearable, whimpered the girl, pulling the sheet over her bare breasts. The young man took from the bedside table cigarettes, lit up right in bed. I have a plan to get rid of the old woman, Selena said. A plan? What kind of plan? The boy asked without looking at her. Under the guise of a trip to the cemetery, you and I will take my mother-in-law to a remote forest and leave her there. She will either freeze or she will be torn apart by wolves. No one will know anything. There's never any people there. No one will help her. Isn't that too cruel? The boy hesitated. A human being, after all, and an elderly and handicapped person. And sit without money every day to change the bed and feed the hated mother-in-law is not cruel, do you think? Selena had to convince Frederick to help her. Yes, without money, of course, it's bad, confirmed the guy. There, feeling the power of persuasion, Selena said, "My mother-in-law has an account left to her by her late husband. Apparently, there's a lot of money in there. From that account, she gave us money for the wedding and the wedding trip. If she's gone, I can manage that money. My hubby can't refuse me anything, believe me." "Are you sure it will work out?" Frederick asked. "Do not even doubt. I did everything right. Now mother-in-law thinks that I penetrated to her kindness of heart, began to trust me." "Oh, you are my Fox Patrickivna," laughed the guy and hid with his head under the sheet. "Your mom is very worried about not being able to go to your father's grave on the anniversary," Selena said to Anthony at dinner. "Yes, you could hire a cab, but I'll just have to leave on a business trip," the guy said sadly. "When I get back, I'll definitely take her. But this date is so important to her, she's so upset, and it could be bad for her health." "I see you've made up," Anthony said approvingly. "Mommy praises you so much, I'm glad." "Anthony, maybe I'll take her. I'm very sorry to see her worry. She told me how much your father loved her," Anthony's wife suddenly suggested. "How do you envision it?" he asked. "We don't have a car. I'll ask one of my college friends, or at least I'll call a cab. You'll leave money for your mom and me, right?" Selena hugged him from behind by the shoulders, kissing the back of his neck tenderly. The boy's breathing became heavy, intermittent. "Of course I will," he said, taking Selena in his arms and carrying her into the bedroom. "How I love you, my darling." The next morning, Selena saw her husband off on a business trip, made tea and sandwiches, took yogurt out of the refrigerator, and headed to her mother-in-law's room. "Good morning," she greeted Angelica as she opened the door. "How are you feeling? Ready for your trip?" "You know, Selena, it's like my whole soul is excited. I just can't wait to visit the grave of John, my beloved late husband. Thank you for doing this for me. You are a very kind girl with a warm heart. Don't praise, or I'll get proud," the daughter-in-law said in a joking tone and placed a tray of tea, sandwiches, and yogurt in front of the woman. "Now you need to be well nourished. It's a long journey and you'll need your strength. So let's have a good breakfast." Angelica obediently ate the yogurt and sandwich, drank all the tea. "Hand me my makeup bag from the dressing table. I want to tidy up. When John was alive, I never allowed myself to show up in front of him without makeup and in a housecoat. And this time, I have to look good. I'll tell him about you too, that you take care of me like my own mother." The daughter-in-law gave her mother-in-law a cosmetic bag and a mirror, then brought a comb and helped to arrange her gray hair. "Let her look beautiful on the day she dies," Selena thought. She didn't feel the slightest bit sorry for the older woman. Angelique's sister-in-law was only thinking that if she didn't have the money, Frederick might find another girl and she wouldn't be able to live without him. Selena's cell phone rang. The girl answered it. "Yes, we are ready. We will be downstairs in 15 minutes. Wait," with a smile she turned to Angelica. "Well, your carriage is here, as I promised. Let's get ready." The daughter-in-law helped her mother-in-law to dress. They slowly left the apartment, went down the elevator. Frederick's blue foreign car was parked in the driveway. The guy got out of the car, obligingly opened the door. "This is Frederick, Angelica, meet." Selena introduced the young man to her mother-in-law. "He and I went to college together. By the way, Anthony knows him too." Selena deliberately lied so Angelica wouldn't worry. Since the boys knew each other, everything would be fine. That was the plan of the conniving sister-in-law. They drove out of town, not driving fast. Angelica knew this road very well. It was the same road she used to go to her dacha, which was a little away. "If we turn right at this fork, we will get to our dacha," the woman said. "Next time," said the daughter-in-law from the front seat. It seemed to the woman that her voice became steely, somehow cold. But she quickly got rid of the unpleasant feeling of approaching danger and enjoyed the winter landscape. The road to the cemetery passed near the territory of a huge protected forest. Angelica remembered how she and her late husband had often traveled here for mushrooms. The woman never went far from John, because she knew from childhood that this forest was home to wild animals. Everywhere you could see traces of wild boars, elks, wolves in the forest. Suddenly, Frederick turned off the road towards the reserve. "Why did we turn off?" Angelica got worried. "We should go straight ahead." "Because we're not going to the cemetery today," Selena said angrily, not even turning around. We have another excursion planned for today. I don't understand anything, Selena. Where are you taking me? The woman was scared out of her wits. To the forest, dear mother-in-law, answered the daughter-in-law. I'll finally get rid of you, you old hag. I've had enough of you. Sitting on a bag of money and every cent I have to pull out of you. Now I can use the money from your husband's account any way I want, and Anthony won't say a word to me. Angelica felt her hands and feet grow cold, even though the car was warm. She shivered, pulled on her mittens. Now we'll take you further into the woods and leave you there. You'll never get home. And the wolves will do their work. Don't worry, the cemetery where your husband is buried is close by. You'll rot in the damp earth nearby. Angelica cried, Selena, take me home. I'll give you all the money and I'll go to the cottage myself. I'll never disturb you and Anthony. I don't want your Anthony. Frederick and I have long loved each other, and Anthony I needed to stay in the capital and to live comfortably. Frederick stopped the car. There was no farther to go. They dragged the old woman out, took her by her arms and legs, dragged her into the woods, drowning in snow. When the deed was done, Angelica's sister-in-law and her lover returned to the car. They drove in silence along the road. Suddenly Selena said, pointing with her hand towards the receding forest, Well, here come our helpers. They will do their job. Frederick looked in the direction of Selena's hand. At the edge of the forest stood a pack of wolves. How much time had passed, Angelica did not know. She woke up in a snowdrift. There were only tall fir trees around. It was pointless to call for help. Praying to God to give her strength to get out of this forest, the woman crawled through the snow. It was getting dark in the forest. She lost consciousness from fear and cold, and woke up at dawn and crawled again, not knowing that she would ever be able to get out. Almost completely exhausted woman suddenly saw that the forest began to thin. In the distance appeared a gap. She gathered all her remaining strength, crawled into the light of the rays penetrating through the thicket, and then lost consciousness again. When she woke up, Angelica saw crosses and monuments in front of her. This was the cemetery where her husband John was laid to rest. I will not survive, so at least I will die on the grave of my beloved husband, thought the woman, and crawled again. She was able to find the monument with John's picture on it. She lay down next to it. The woman felt nothing, her body as if it didn't belong to her. My darling, I'm coming to you. Wait, I'm coming soon. We'll be together again. Angelica whispered with icy lips, and only one tear rolled out of her eyes, which instantly froze on her cheek, turning into a small ice flake. Mom? Suddenly the woman heard a voice. It came from far away. Mommy, what's wrong with you? Why are you here? Why are you alone? Oh my God, are you alive? Angelica opened her eyes with difficulty. She saw Beatty's blurry, frightened expression. Is Beatty in heaven too? Angelica thought. Her daughter tried to lift her mother up, but the woman was falling back into the snow. Then Beatty grabbed her by the hood of her coat and dragged her straight through the snow past the monuments to the road. The cab driver was waiting for Beatty at the cemetery gate. He saw his passenger dragging a half-dead woman across the ground, jumped out of the car, ran toward her. What happened? He shouted. Who is it? Help me, please, asked Betty. It's my mom. I found her on my father's grave. The two of them struggled to get the half-dead woman into the car. Drive fast as you can to the hospital, Beatty asked the driver. The man was speeding down the road. A man's life depended on how fast he was going now. As he pulled onto the country highway from the country road, he increased his speed. And at the entrance to the city, he didn't notice the traffic police car and the officer who ordered him to stop on the side of the road. Shit, the driver swore. Together with Betty, they jumped out of the car, ran up to the policeman, began to explain confusedly that they were taking to the hospital a sick, frostbitten woman they had found in the cemetery. It took a few minutes for the police to realize that the way the old woman was treated would determine whether she would live. At the sound of the siren of the police car escorting the car with Angelica, the cab flew into the hospital courtyard. Anthony was returning from his business trip in a good, happy mood. He already imagined how his beloved wife and mother were waiting for him at home, and he bought various goodies. They would surely drink tea together and share the news. Coming out of the elevator, he was surprised to find that the door of their apartment was ajar. Selena, why is the door open? Her husband asked, entering the hallway. To his surprise, he saw that there were some strangers in police uniforms sitting in the hall, and Beatty's sister was talking to them. What's going on? The boy asked. Beatty, How did you end up here? And who are you? The policeman asked Anthony. I live here. Confused guy with my mother and wife. We'll figure it out. Have a seat. The policeman pointed to the couch. Not understanding anything, Anthony sat down and stared at the officer. Having handed over the exhausted, frostbitten mother to the doctors, Betty turned to the policeman, asked what she should do. They offered to give her a ride to the station. There you will tell everything. The investigator listened to Betty. On the anniversary of her father's death, she went to visit his grave, where she found her mother lying in the snow with her cheek pressed against the photo of her husband. How she had gotten there, Betty didn't know. The investigator asked his subordinates to find out what cars were recorded on CCTV cameras on the way to the cemetery. It turned out that only one car passed by. Its license plates were run through the database. The owner turned out to be one Frederick Novikov. An outfit was sent to the guy's address. Frightened, Frederick told everything, asked to take into account that to drive into the forest and leave there an old woman to be eaten by wolves was the idea of his mistress Selena, and he only drove the car in the direction indicated. Frederick and Selena were arrested, and after the trial were sent to prison to serve time for attempting to kill a man. Angelica was in intensive care for a long time. Doctors fought for her life. When she woke up, she saw in front of her the nurse Natalie, who took care of the woman when she was in the same hospital. The other day, Natalie was called to the notary's office. A fabulous sum, bequeathed by a grateful patient, had fallen into her account.
Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel. Like it, write comments if you like the story, and see you on the channel.